Jake never thought his biggest problem at university would be getting trapped with his mysterious roommate during the worst possible time. But here he was, staring at the emergency lockdown notice flashing on his tablet screen while his alien roommate paced nervously around their shared apartment. The whole thing started 6 months ago when Jake first arrived at Kepler Station University. He was just a regular guy from Earth, trying to make sense of his xenobiology studies while living thousands of light years from home. The university housing department had paired him with Arya, and honestly, he couldn't have asked for a better roommate. Arya was different, though, not just because she was from the Valanian species, but something about her seemed special. She had this elegant way of moving, like she was dancing even when just walking to the kitchen. Her skin had this subtle shimmer that changed colors when she was happy or stressed, shifting from pale silver to soft gold. She always spoke with perfect grammar, never used slang, and somehow knew things about galactic politics that most students didn't care about. But she was also kind. When Jake struggled with his advanced chemistry homework, she would sit with him for hours, explaining complex molecular structures with patience he'd never experienced before. When he got homesick and missed Earth food, she learned to cook human dishes just to cheer him up. They had become genuine friends, even if she sometimes seemed to be hiding something important. The winter break had arrived, and most students were heading home to their families. Jake had planned to stay behind to work on his thesis project about how different species adapt to living together. His research was going well, and he needed access to the university's advanced lab equipment. Plus, the ticket back to Earth cost more money than his part-time job could cover. He assumed Arya would be going home too. Her family seemed wealthy, based on the expensive things she casually owned, and she often received mysterious packages with official-looking seals. But when he asked about her travel plans, she got that nervous look she sometimes had when personal topics came up. "My travel arrangements fell through," she said quickly, not meeting his eyes. "I'll be staying here too." Jake didn't push the subject. Everyone had their family complications, and he was actually happy to have company during the break. The dormitory would be nearly empty, and having a friend around would make the lonely weeks more bearable. The first few days of break were peaceful. Jake spent his mornings in the lab, analyzing data from his experiments about human and alien interaction patterns. Arya kept to her usual routine of studying, though she seemed more restless than normal. She would start reading, then get up and walk around, then sit back down only to repeat the cycle. "Everything okay?" Jake asked one evening as they shared dinner in their small kitchen. "Just tired," Arya replied, but her skin was shifting between silver and a deep blue he'd never seen before. "The change in routine is affecting me more than I expected." Jake noticed she'd been eating less too, and sometimes he caught her staring out the window with an expression he couldn't read. But whenever he tried to ask, she would change the subject or find an excuse to go to her room. Then the solar storm hit. It started as a routine announcement over the station's communication system. "Attention all residents. Due to increased solar activity, all non-essential personnel should remain in their quarters until further notice." Jake didn't think much of it. Space weather was common, and these warnings usually lasted a few hours at most. He continued working on his research, noting how the electromagnetic interference was affecting some of his equipment readings. But the storm got worse, much worse. By the third day, the station's emergency protocols kicked in. Blast doors sealed off sections of the dormitory. The main power grid switched to minimal energy mode, dimming the lights and reducing heating to conserve resources. Most importantly, the lockdown became mandatory. Due to dangerous radiation levels and system instability, the automated announcement, repeated every few hours, "All residents must remain in designated safe zones. Estimated duration, 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks. Jake stared at the message on his tablet, trying to process what that meant. He was trapped in a small apartment with his roommate for potentially a month, with limited resources and No way to get help if something went wrong. That's when he noticed Arya's behavior becoming truly strange. She had always been graceful and controlled, but now she seemed unable to sit still. She would pace from room to room, her hands trembling, slightly when she thought he wasn't looking. Her skin color changes became more frequent and intense, shifting through shades he'd never seen before. Sometimes it would pulse with a soft, warm light that seemed to follow her heartbeat. "This is the worst possible timing," she muttered one evening, standing by the window and staring out at the swirling electromagnetic storms surrounding the station. "What do you mean?" Jake asked, looking up from his research notes. Arya spun around, clearly not realizing she'd spoken out loud. "Nothing. Just worried about missing classes when everything returns to normal." But Jake could tell that wasn't the whole truth. His xenobiology studies had taught him to observe behavioral patterns, and everything about Arya's recent behavior suggested she was dealing with something much more significant than academic concerns. The apartment began to smell different, too. It was subtle at first, almost like flowers blooming, but with an underlying warmth that made Jake feel oddly relaxed and alert at the same time. He assumed it was some kind of air filtration change due to the emergency systems. What Jake didn't realize was that his own behavior was starting to change as well. He found himself more aware of every sound Arya made every time she entered or left a room. When she seemed distressed, he felt an unusual urge to help, even when she hadn't asked for anything. His usually logical, scientific mind was becoming more emotional and protective. On the fourth night of their lockdown, Jake woke up to the sound of Arya moving around the common area. He checked his tablet. It was 3 in the morning. He quietly opened his door and found her standing in the middle of their small living room, her arms wrapped around herself, looking lost. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. She jumped, startled by his voice. In the dim emergency lighting, her skin was glowing with a soft golden light that pulsed gently. It was beautiful, but also concerning because he'd never seen her do that before. "I'm sorry if I woke you," she said, her voice shaky. "I just feel so restless. Like something important is happening, but I don't know what." Jake stepped closer, noting that the floral scent was much stronger now. "Is this normal for your species? Maybe it's a reaction to the electromagnetic storm?" Arya looked at him with an expression that seemed to be weighing whether she could trust him with something important. Her skin shifted to deep blue again. The color he was learning meant she was nervous or afraid. "Jake," she said quietly, "there are things about me that I haven't told you. Things that could change how you see me." "What kind of things?" She opened her mouth to respond, then shook her head. "I can't. Not yet. But if we're going to be stuck here much longer, you're going to find out anyway." That's when Jake realized their situation was about to become much more complicated than just being trapped together during a solar storm. Whatever Arya was hiding, it was something that would affect both of them. And based on the fear in her eyes, she wasn't sure either of them was ready for what was coming. As he watched her retreat to her room, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the next few weeks would test their friendship in ways he couldn't even imagine. The storm outside was nothing compared to whatever storm was building inside their small apartment. By the 3rd day of lockdown, Jake knew something was seriously wrong with Arya. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days, and the strange glowing from her skin was getting brighter every hour. The sweet floral scent that filled their apartment was so strong now that Jake felt dizzy whenever he stayed in the same room too long. He found her that morning sitting on the floor of the living room, her back against the wall, staring at nothing. Her skin was cycling through colors he'd never seen before. Deep purples, bright golds, and silver so intense it almost hurt to look at. "Arya," Jake said carefully, sitting down a few feet away from her, "I think we need to talk. Really talk." She looked at him with eyes that seemed to glow from within. "You wouldn't understand." Nobody would understand. Try me, Jake said. I'm studying xenobiology, remember? I've learned about all kinds of biological processes in different species. Maybe I can help. Arya laughed, but there was no humor in it. This isn't something you study in textbooks, Jake. This is something that could destroy my entire life if anyone found out. Jake felt that protective instinct rising again, stronger than before. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. But I can't help if you don't tell me what's happening. For a long moment, Arya just stared at him. Then, slowly, she began to speak. My species has a biological cycle that happens every few years, she said quietly. It's called the bonding season. During this time, we experience intense physical and emotional changes. Our bodies produce powerful chemical signals. Our senses become heightened, and we lose much of our normal emotional control. Jake listened carefully, his scientific mind already trying to process what she was telling him. Like some kind of reproductive cycle? Similar, but more complex, Arya continued. It's not just about reproduction, it's about forming deep emotional connections. During this time, Valanians seek out their life partners. The chemical changes make us more sensitive, more open, more vulnerable. It's considered a sacred time in our culture. Okay, Jake said slowly. And you're going through this now? Arya nodded, her skin shifting to a deep blue that Jake now recognized as embarrassment. I've been taking suppressants for the past year to hide it. The university requires health monitoring for all alien students, and if they knew I was approaching a bonding season, they would have sent me home immediately. Different species aren't supposed to be exposed to these kinds of biological processes. Jake's mind raced. But your suppressants ran out? 3 days ago, Arya whispered. Right before the lockdown started. I had a shipment coming from home, but with the solar storm, nothing's getting through. That explained everything. The behavioral changes, the glowing skin, the strange scents, and even Jake's own unusual reactions. Is this dangerous? For you, I mean? Not physically dangerous, Arya said, but emotionally and socially it could ruin everything. During bonding season, Valanians aren't fully in control of their actions. We become driven by instinct and emotion rather than logic. We might do or say things that we would never normally do. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of things? Arya's skin flushed bright gold. We become intensely focused on whoever we're closest to. We might try to bond with them, even if they're not Valanian. Even if they're not interested. Even if it would cause massive diplomatic problems. That's when the second shoe dropped. There's something else I haven't told you, Arya said, her voice barely above a whisper. Something that makes this situation even more complicated. What? I'm not just any Valanian student. I'm Princess Ariathis of the Royal House of Valen. I'm third in line to rule my entire planet. Jake stared at her, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under him. You're a princess? I came to university under a false identity because I wanted to experience normal life for once. I wanted to make real friends, learn about other species, and not have every interaction colored by my royal status. Tears were forming in her eyes, which Jake had never seen before. But if I lose control during my bonding season, especially around a human, it could cause a diplomatic crisis between our worlds. Jake's head was spinning. His quiet, mysterious roommate was alien royalty going through some kind of biological crisis that could apparently affect interplanetary relations. How bad could it be? Valanians form deep emotional bonds during this time. If I bond with you, my family, and the royal court might interpret it as some kind of political alliance. Or worse, they might think you took advantage of my vulnerable state. Humans are still new to the galactic community. This could damage your entire species' reputation. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. So what do we do? I don't know, Arya said, and for the first time since he'd known her. She sounded completely lost. In normal circumstances, I would be surrounded by family and trusted advisors who understand the process. They would help me through it safely. But here, trapped alone with you, you're not alone, Jake said firmly. We're in this together. You don't understand the risk you're taking, Arya said urgently. The chemical signals I'm producing are designed to affect potential partners. They might be making you feel things that aren't real. You might think you want to help me, but it could just be biological manipulation. Jake considered this. It was true that he'd been feeling more protective and emotionally connected to Arya over the past few days. But those feelings had been building for months, long before her cycle started. Maybe some of what I'm feeling is influenced by your biology, he said, but not all of it. I've cared about you as a friend since the day we met. That's not going to change just because things got complicated. Arya looked at him with an expression of hope mixed with fear. Even knowing what I am? Even knowing the problems this could cause? Especially knowing what you are, Jake said. You trusted me with your secret. That means something. But the next few weeks are going to be difficult, Arya warned. I don't know how much control I'll have over my actions. I might say things or do things that make you uncomfortable. I might become overly emotional or demanding. My instincts will be telling me to form a bond with the closest person to me, and that's you. Jake took a deep breath. Then we'll deal with it as it comes. We'll establish boundaries, communicate clearly, and figure out how to get through this, without anyone getting hurt. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it doesn't have to be complicated, Jake said. You're going through a biological process. I'm a xenobiology student. We approach this scientifically with respect for both our species and clear communication about what we're both comfortable with. For the first time in days, Arya smiled. You really think we can handle this? I think we're about to find out, Jake said. But whatever happens, you don't have to face it alone. As he said those words, Jake realized that everything between them had changed forever. They were no longer just roommates or even just friends. They were partners facing an unprecedented situation that would test everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other. The next morning, Jake woke up to find Arya sitting at their small kitchen table, surrounded by books and tablet screens. She looked exhausted, but more focused than she had been in days. Her skin was still shifting colors, but the changes seemed slower and more controlled. I've been researching, she said without looking up, trying to understand what we're dealing with. Jake poured himself coffee and sat across from her. Find anything useful? Some things, Arya said, finally meeting his eyes. The good news is that bonding season isn't as uncontrollable as I thought. There are ways to manage it, especially with the right environmental conditions and support system. What kind of environmental conditions? Arya gestured to her tablet screen, which showed complex biological diagrams. Temperature control is important. My body temperature rises during this time, so cooler environments help me think more clearly. Certain types of light can also help regulate the chemical processes, and having a calm, predictable routine reduces stress, which makes everything more manageable. Jake nodded, his engineering mind already working. I can adjust the apartment's climate controls, and we can set up a schedule that works for both of us. There's more, Arya continued. I found some research papers about interspecies interaction during Valanian biological cycles. Apparently, humans and Valanians have more biological compatibility than most species. That's why you've been affected by my chemical signals. Affected? How? You've been more protective lately, haven't you? More aware of my emotional state? That's not just you being a good friend. Your human biology is actually responding to my Valanian signals in ways that scientists are just beginning to understand. Jake thought about it. She was right. He had been feeling unusually attuned to her needs and emotions. Is that a problem? It could be helpful, actually, Arya said, her skin shifting to a hopeful silver. The research suggests that having a trusted companion during bonding season can make the process smoother and safer, but only if both people understand what's happening and communicate clearly about boundaries. Over the next few days, they developed a system that worked surprisingly well. Jake adjusted their apartment's temperature to keep Arya comfortable, and he modified the lighting to cycle through wavelengths that helped regulate her biological processes. They established regular meal times, study periods, and relaxation breaks. More importantly, they learned to communicate in ways they never had before. "My instincts are telling me to stay close to you," Arya explained one evening as they worked on their respective studies. "Not in a romantic way necessarily, but more like you're my anchor to feeling safe and stable. Is that okay?" "Of course," Jake said. "Just let me know if you need space or if I'm doing anything that makes you uncomfortable." "Actually, having you nearby helps," Arya admitted. "When you're in another room, I start feeling anxious and restless. But when you're close, I can focus better." Jake found this fascinating from a scientific perspective. He started taking notes on the changes he observed in both Arya and himself, thinking it might be valuable data for his xenobiology research later. But it wasn't just about managing Arya's biological needs. As the days passed, Jake began to understand more about who she really was beyond the princess title. "What's it like?" he asked one afternoon as they sat together reading. "Growing up as royalty?" Arya was quiet for a long moment. "Lonely," she said finally. "Everything you do is political. Every friendship might be someone trying to use you for advantage. Every decision affects not just you, but millions of people across multiple planets." "Is that why you came here under a false identity?" "I wanted to know what it felt like to be valued for myself, not for my title or my family's power," Arya explained. "When I first met you, you just saw me as Arya, another student trying to figure out advanced chemistry. You didn't treat me like I was fragile or important or dangerous. You just treated me like a person." Jake realized how significant that must have been for her. "And now? Now you know the truth, but you're still treating me like a person," Arya said, her skin glowing with warm gold. "That means more to me than you might understand." As Arya shared stories about her life on Velen, Jake began to see the incredible pressure she'd been under. She had been trained from childhood to put her people's needs before her own, to never show weakness, and to always consider the political implications of every action. "But what do you want?" Jake asked. "Not what your family wants, or what's good for your planet. What does Arya want for her own life?" It was the first time anyone had asked her that question. She stared at him for a long moment, her skin cycling through several colors as she processed the idea. "I want to finish my degree," she said slowly. "I want to become a xenobiologist and help different species understand each other better. I want to use my position to build bridges instead of walls, and I want to have friendships that aren't based on politics or advantage." "Those all sound like good goals to me," Jake said, "even if pursuing them means challenging traditions that have existed for centuries on my world." "Especially then," Jake replied. "Sometimes the most important changes happen when someone is brave enough to try something different." But their peaceful routine was interrupted when Jake's tablet chimed with an urgent message. His face went pale as he read it. "What's wrong?" Arya asked, immediately sensing his distress. "It's from Earth Communications Authority. They're asking about my status and requesting immediate contact with any family members," Jake said. "Someone's been trying to reach me through official channels." Arya's skin shifted to deep blue. "My family," she said quietly. "They must be trying to contact me too, but since I'm using false identity documents, they can't reach me directly. So they're probably putting pressure on the university, and that pressure is filtering down to anyone who might know where I am." "What does that mean for us?" "It means we're running out of time," Arya said. Once my family realizes where I am and what's happening, they'll find a way to get me out of here, even if it means breaking the quarantine. And that will raise questions about why their princess was trapped alone with a human during her bonding season. Jake felt that protective instinct surge again, stronger than ever. Then we need to figure out how to handle this before they arrive. There's something else, Arya said, her voice barely above a whisper. My biological cycle is reaching its peak phase. The next few days are going to be the most intense. I might not be able to control my reactions or my instincts as well as I have been. What kind of reactions? Emotional intensity, mostly. I might become overly attached to you or overly protective of our space, or I might say things that I wouldn't normally say. The research papers warned that this phase can be overwhelming for both people involved. Jake took a deep breath. Then we'll get through it the same way we've gotten through everything else, together, with clear communication and mutual respect. You make it sound so simple. Maybe the best solutions are simple, Jake said. We trust each other, we're honest about what we're feeling, and we remember that whatever happens over the next few days, we're both good people trying to do the right thing in an impossible situation. As if summoned by their conversation, Jake's tablet chimed again with another message, this one marked with official Valanian diplomatic seals. Their time was running out, and the most challenging part of their ordeal was just beginning. The crisis hit on day 12 of the lockdown. Jake woke up to find Arya standing by the window, her entire body glowing with an intensity he'd never seen before. Her skin wasn't just changing colors anymore. It was pulsing with light that seemed to come from deep within her cells. The sweet scent that had filled their apartment was now so strong that Jake felt dizzy just walking into the room. Arya, he said carefully. How are you feeling? She turned to look at him, and Jake was shocked by what he saw. Her eyes were completely gold now, glowing like small suns, and when she moved, it was with a fluid grace that seemed almost otherworldly. She was still Arya, but something fundamental had changed. Everything is so clear now, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made Jake's heart race. I can feel your emotions, your concern for me. It's beautiful. Jake's scientific mind recognized what was happening. Arya had entered the peak phase of her bonding season. All the research they'd done had warned him about this moment, but experiencing it was completely different from reading about it. I need you to stay with me, Arya said, moving closer to him. Don't leave me alone. Promise me you won't leave. I promise, Jake said, though he could feel his own heart racing. The intensity of her presence was overwhelming, but not in a frightening way. It was more like standing next to a warm fire on a cold night, compelling and comforting at the same time. That's when his tablet started buzzing with urgent messages. Emergency evacuation team en route, the first message read. Princess Arya Thys of Velan must be extracted immediately for diplomatic safety. They found me, Arya said, her glow flickering with distress. My family's diplomatic team. They're coming to take me away. Medical team standing by for decontamination procedures, another message said. Human subject may require treatment for biological exposure. Jake felt a surge of anger at that last message. Biological exposure, like you're some kind of disease? That's how they see it, Arya said sadly. Humans and Valanians aren't supposed to interact during bonding season. They probably think you've been contaminated or manipulated by my biological signals. That's ridiculous, Jake said. You haven't manipulated me into anything. Every choice I've made has been my own. But even as he said it, Jake could see the problem they were facing. How could he prove that his feelings and actions were genuine when there was clear evidence of biological influence? How could Arya prove she hadn't lost control when she was literally glowing with alien biology? The situation got worse when the apartment's intercom crackled to life. Princess Arya Thys, this is Commander Veltar of the Royal Valanian Guard. We have authorization to override station lockdown protocols for your immediate extraction. Please prepare for emergency transport. Arya's glow intensified with panic. If they take me now, during my peak phase, it will be seen as proof that I couldn't handle myself around other species. It could damage human-Valanian relations for decades. Then we don't let them take you, Jake said firmly. Jake, they have the authority to break down our door if necessary, and they have medical teams standing by to treat you for biological contamination. If you resist, they might assume you're not thinking clearly because of my influence. That's when Jake's engineering background kicked in. He'd spent months studying the station's systems for his research, and he knew things about the dormitory's layout that even the security teams might not realize. The emergency lockdown isn't just about keeping people in, he said, moving to his computer terminal. It's also about keeping unauthorized people out. Even diplomatic teams can't override all the safety protocols. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that if we can prove you're in control of yourself during your peak phase, and that I'm making rational decisions despite the biological influence, then we can challenge their assumptions about what happened here. Jake started typing, rapidly, accessing the station's environmental controls. The dormitory has been recording everything during the lockdown. Temperature, air quality, biological markers, even audio levels. All of that data shows exactly what happened between us. The data shows that we maintained appropriate boundaries, that we worked together rationally to solve problems, and that neither of us did anything inappropriate or harmful, Arya realized, her glow shifting to hopeful gold. Exactly. And more importantly, it shows that humans and Valanians can interact safely during bonding season when there's mutual respect and clear communication. Jake finished his work and turned to face Arya. But this only works if you're willing to stand up to your family's diplomatic team. You're the princess. They can't force you to do anything you don't want to do. They can if they believe I'm not thinking clearly. Then we prove that you are thinking clearly, Jake said. We show them that you made informed decisions, that you understood the risks, and that you chose to trust me with your safety. The intercom crackled again. Princess, we are beginning override procedures. Please step away from the human and prepare for immediate transport. Arya looked at Jake, and he could see her making a decision that would change everything. Her glow steadied into a warm, confident gold, and when she spoke, it was with the authority of someone born to rule. Commander Veltar, this is Princess. Area Thys, she said, activating the apartment's communication system. I am not in distress, I have not been harmed or manipulated, and I do not require extraction. I am ordering you to stand down. Princess, with respect, you are not in a condition to make rational decisions. The human's proximity during your bonding season has compromised your judgment. My judgment is perfectly clear, Arya said firmly, and I have proof. She gestured to Jake, who transmitted the environmental data to the diplomatic team. For the past 12 days, this human has helped me through my bonding season, with complete respect for my autonomy and dignity. The station's monitoring systems have recorded everything. We maintained appropriate boundaries, made rational decisions, together, and proved that interspecies cooperation is possible even under challenging biological circumstances. There was a long pause on the communication channel. Furthermore, Arya continued, this experience has provided valuable scientific data about human-Valanian compatibility that could benefit both our species. Rather than seeing this as a diplomatic problem, you should see it as a diplomatic opportunity. Princess, the commander's voice was uncertain now. Your family is very concerned about the political implications. Then tell my family that their daughter has learned something important about building bridges between species instead of walls, Arya said. And tell them that I intend to use this experience to benefit both our worlds. Jake felt a surge of pride watching Arya take control of the situation. This was what real leadership looked like. Not just having authority, but using it wisely and courageously. We will need to file a full report, the commander said finally. Of course, Arya replied, "and I will be happy to provide testimony about the exemplary character and behavior of my human friend, who protected my safety and dignity when he could have taken advantage of my vulnerable state." After the communication ended, Arya turned to Jake, her glow softer now but still warm and golden. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." "Thank you for trusting me," Jake replied, "and for standing up for what we accomplished together." 3 days after the diplomatic crisis, the solar storm finally began to weaken. The station's emergency systems started powering back up, and the lockdown restrictions were gradually lifted. Jake and Arya sat together in their apartment, watching the electromagnetic storms outside their window fade into normal space weather. "It's almost over," Arya said softly. Her skin had returned to its normal subtle shimmer, though Jake noticed it still shifted to warm gold whenever she looked at him. "The storm, yes," Jake said, "but everything else is just beginning." He was right. Over the past few days, their situation had become the center of intense attention from both human and Valanian officials. Scientists wanted to study their biological compatibility data. Diplomats wanted to understand the political implications, and the media had somehow gotten word of the princess and the human story. "I've been thinking about what happens next," Arya said, curling up in her favorite chair. "My family wants me to return to Velan immediately to discuss my future. The university is offering to transfer me to any program I want, with full privacy protection. And the Interspecies Relations Council wants to interview both of us about our experience." "That's a lot of pressure," Jake observed. "It is, but for the first time in my life, I know exactly what I want to do." Jake looked at her curiously. "What's that?" "I want to stay here and finish my degree," Arya said firmly. "I want to continue the research we started, studying human-Valanian biological compatibility. And I want to do it as your partner. Both, scientifically and personally." Jake felt his heart skip. "Arya, are you sure? The attention, the political complications, the way people will always wonder if our feelings are real or just biological." "I've been thinking about that too," Arya said, moving to sit closer to him. "What we shared during my bonding season was intense and complicated. But my feelings for you started long before my cycle began. They started the first time you helped me with chemistry homework without asking for anything in return. They grew stronger every time you treated me like a person instead of a princess. And they became something deeper when you risked everything to protect my dignity and autonomy." "The biological influence was real, though," Jake said. "We can't ignore that." "We're not ignoring it. We're choosing to see it as one factor among many, not the only factor," Arya explained. "Humans fall in love partly because of biology, too. Hormones, pheromones, evolutionary drives. That doesn't make human love less real or meaningful." Jake considered this. She had a point. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I want to build a relationship with you based on who we really are, not just who we were during a crisis," Arya said. "I want to see what happens when we choose each other freely, without lockdowns or biological cycles or diplomatic emergencies forcing us together. Even knowing how complicated it will be? Especially because it will be complicated," Arya said, her skin glowing with that warm gold again. "Easy relationships don't change the galaxy, but partnerships built on mutual respect, scientific curiosity, and genuine affection, those might actually make a difference." Jake's tablet buzzed with a message, interrupting their conversation. He glanced at it and smiled. "What is it?" Arya asked. "It's from the Xenobiology department. They're offering us joint research positions studying interspecies biological compatibility. Apparently, our experience has provided more useful data than 20 years of theoretical research. They want to hire both of us?" "As a team," Jake confirmed. "The message says they're particularly interested in our communication techniques and boundary-setting protocols." Arya laughed, a sound Jake had missed during the intensity of her bonding season. We accidentally became relationship experts for two entire species. Accidentally? Well, maybe not entirely accidentally, Arya admitted. You did approach the whole situation like a scientist from the beginning. Clear observation, hypothesis testing, careful documentation, and respectful experimentation. And you approached it like a diplomat, Jake said. Considering all stakeholders, managing complex negotiations, and finding solutions that worked for everyone involved. So we each brought our strengths to an impossible situation and somehow made it work. More than work, Jake said. We made it into something beautiful. Another message appeared on Jake's tablet, this one with the seal of the Royal House of Valen. Official message from your family? Jake asked. Arya read over his shoulder. It's from my mother, the Queen. She wants to meet you. Is that good or bad? With my mother, it could go either way, Arya said. But the fact that she wants to meet you instead of having you arrested is probably a good sign. What does the message say? She's requesting a formal audience to discuss the political and diplomatic implications of our relationship. But she also says she's curious about the human who earned her daughter's trust and respect during such a vulnerable time. Jake felt nervous butterflies in his stomach. Meeting alien royalty wasn't exactly in my life plans. Jake, you've already proven you can handle extraordinary situations with grace and wisdom, Arya said, taking his hand. Besides, you won't be facing her alone. We're partners now, remember? Partners, Jake repeated, liking the sound of that. In research, in diplomacy, and in whatever comes next, Arya confirmed. Over the next few hours, they received more messages. Jake's parents wanted to meet Arya. The university was planning a ceremony to honor their contribution to interspecies understanding. 3 different publishers wanted to buy the rights to their story. It's overwhelming, Jake admitted, as they sorted through all the attention. We don't have to do everything, Arya said. We can choose what matters most to us and politely decline the rest. What matters most to you? Finishing our education, continuing our research, and building a relationship that makes both of us happy, Arya said without hesitation. Everything else is just noise, Jake smiled. That sounds perfect to me. As the day ended and normal life slowly returned to the station, Jake and Arya sat together planning their future. They would face challenges, political pressure, media attention, and the ongoing question of how much their biology influenced their feelings. But they would face those challenges together with the same respect, communication, and scientific curiosity that had gotten them through their ordeal. You know what the most surprising thing about all this has been? Jake said as they watched the stars return to normal brightness outside their window. What? I came to university to study how different species adapt to living together. I never expected to become a living example of my own research. Arya laughed. And I came here to experience normal life for once. I definitely didn't expect to fall for my human roommate during the most abnormal circumstances possible. Do you regret any of it? Not for a second, Arya said, her skin glowing with warm, steady gold. This has been the most real, honest, and meaningful experience of my entire life. Jake squeezed her hand. Mine, too. They had survived a solar storm, a biological crisis, and a diplomatic incident. But more importantly, they had discovered that understanding, respect, and genuine affection could bridge any gap between different species. Their story was just beginning, but Jake was confident that whatever came next, they would face it the same way they had faced everything else. Together, with clear communication, mutual support, and the knowledge that the best partnerships are built on seeing each other as complete, complex, and valuable individuals. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to build together.